The winter came to the Wild West like an uninvited enemy, cruel and relentless. Snow buried the plains, erased the dirt roads and turned familiar landscapes into endless fields of white silence. The wind never rested. It howled through broken fences, slipped through cracks in old wooden barns, and carried with it the loneliness of a land where survival was never guaranteed. In this harsh world, a young woman named Ishta disappeared, and her disappearance quietly reshaped more lives than anyone could have imagined. Ishta was 23 years old, a native woman with long black hair and deep, expressive eyes that reflected both strength and suffering. She had grown up learning to stay quiet, to obey and to endure. Her mother had died when she was still young, and after that her life slowly lost any sense of warmth. Her stepfather was a hard man, driven by greed rather than love. To him, Ishta was never a daughter, she was a responsibility he wanted to get rid of. When Ishta turned 20, her stepfather made a deal that sealed her fate. He arranged her marriage to a wealthy Apache man, a man known for his influence and possessions rather than his kindness. Money exchanged hands, and with that transaction, Ishta's future was decided without her consent. The wedding was grand, filled with guests, music and celebration. Everyone believed Ishta was fortunate. No one noticed how tightly she held her hands together, or how her smile never reached her eyes. For a short time, Ishta tried to accept her new life. She told herself that marriage might offer stability, perhaps even affection. But her fragile hopes were shattered only 2 months later. One evening, her husband returned home with another woman and announced that he had taken a second wife. The words echoed in Ishta's ears like a sentence passed by fate itself. From that day forward, Ishta's place in the household changed completely. She was no longer treated as a wife. She became a servant. Her husband made it clear that her role was to obey, work, and remain silent. The new wife, jealous and cruel, took pleasure in reminding Ishta of her lowered status. She ordered her around, insulted her constantly, and punished her for even the smallest mistake. Ishta's husband never stopped it. Sometimes he encouraged it. Days turned into months of quiet suffering. Ishta woke before sunrise to begin her chores and worked until her body ached and her hands trembled with exhaustion. At night, she lay alone, staring into darkness, wondering how her life had slipped so far beyond her control. She felt invisible, trapped, and forgotten. The breaking point came on a night colder than most. After being humiliated and beaten once again, Ishta looked at herself in a cracked reflection and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes were empty, her spirit crushed. In that moment she understood something clearly for the first time. If she stayed, she would slowly die, not just in body but in soul. That night, while the household slept, Ishta wrapped herself in a thin shawl and slipped out into the darkness. The cold struck her immediately, biting into her skin, but she did not turn back. Fear followed her with every step, but hope, small and trembling, pushed her forward. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs felt numb. For 4 days Ishta wandered through the frozen wilderness. She crossed open plains where the wind threatened to knock her down and forests where shadows seemed to watch her every move. She survived on melted snow and whatever roots she could find beneath the ice. At night, she slept curled against trees or rocks, shivering, afraid to close her eyes for too long. The thought of being found haunted her constantly. By the 4th day her strength was gone. Her steps slowed, her vision blurred, and her body shook uncontrollably. As darkness approached, she stumbled upon an old, abandoned barn standing alone against the white horizon. The door creaked as she pushed it open. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old hay. She collapsed onto the ground, too weak to move, and slipped into unconsciousness as the cold wrapped around her like a final embrace. Not far from that barn lived Waya, a 30-year-old cowboy known for his quiet nature and solitary life. He had learned early that the Wild West was not kind to dreamers. His parents had died years earlier, leaving him to survive on his own. Over time he had grown comfortable with silence, trusting animals more than people. His small cabin stood alone on the edge of the plains, a place of routine and solitude. That morning Waya rode out to check the old barn on his land, worried that the heavy snowfall might have caused damage. When he pushed the door open, cold air rushed past him. His eyes adjusted slowly to the dim light inside, and then he saw her. A woman lay motionless on the ground, her body curled inward, her skin pale against the dark hay. For a terrifying moment he thought she was dead. He rushed forward, checking for signs of life. When he felt a faint pulse beneath his fingers, relief surged through him. Without hesitation, Waya removed his coat, wrapped it around her, and lifted her carefully into his arms. He carried her through the snow to his cabin, ignoring the cold biting at his own skin. Inside he built a fire, warmed water, and did everything he could to save her. He stayed awake through the night, listening to her shallow breathing, afraid that it might stop. When Ishta finally opened her eyes, confusion and fear filled her chest. Strange walls surrounded her, and panic made her struggle to sit up. Waya spoke gently, his voice calm and steady, telling her she was safe. He offered her water and food, never raising his voice, never touching her unnecessarily. She did not trust him, not yet, but her body was too weak to resist. Over the next few days Ishta slowly regained her strength. Waya never asked questions, never demanded explanations. He respected her silence, giving her space and dignity. His kindness confused her. She had learned to believe that kindness always came with a cost, but he expected nothing in return. As Ishta recovered, she began helping around the cabin. Cooking, cleaning, mending clothes, it all felt familiar, but this time there was no fear attached to the work. Waya thanked her, a simple word that made her pause every time she heard it. No one had ever thanked her before. Gradually they began to talk. At first their conversations were cautious and brief. Then slowly Ishta shared fragments of her past. Waya listened quietly, his jaw tightening as he understood the depth of her suffering. He never interrupted or doubted her words. For the first time, Ishta felt truly heard. Outside the cabin, rumors began to spread. People noticed the woman living with the lone cowboy and whispered among themselves. Meanwhile, Ishta's husband searched relentlessly, his pride wounded more than his heart. When he finally tracked her down, anger and entitlement burned in his eyes. The confrontation was tense. He accused Waya of stealing his wife, demanding her return. Fear surged through Ishta, but something inside her had changed. She stepped forward, her voice shaking but firm, and spoke the truth. She told them everything: the forced marriage, the abuse, the years of silent suffering. Neighbors gathered, listening in shock. The man's authority crumbled under the weight of her words. He left in humiliation, defeated not by violence but by truth. That night, Ishta cried by the fire, releasing years of buried pain. Waya sat beside her, offering quiet comfort. In that moment, trust deepened into something stronger, something neither of them had planned but both had needed. As winter slowly gave way to spring, the land softened, and so did their hearts. Their bond grew gently, built on respect, understanding, and shared healing. Waya never rushed her, never pressured her. When he finally asked her to choose him freely, Ishta said yes, not out of fear or dependence but out of love. They married simply, under the open sky, with the plains stretching endlessly around them. In each other they found not just love but home, freedom, and peace. In the wild and unforgiving West, two broken souls found a future shaped not by pain, but by choice, and that made all the difference.